It's my great pleasure to be here, and very good morning to everyone here. Of course, you realize from the title of the lecture, this is not an easy job, and it is a very complicated subject. So I will try within these 45 minutes to touch in the topic. I am very honored, and it is prestigious for me that to give this special lecture, which, as the chairman have mentioned, that named after Professor William Ramey, the founder of the World Heart Failure Society. So please. So Professor William Ramey from Netherlands, far away in that cold place and a lot of ice during winter, is remembering the third world countries and developing countries, because people in US and Europe, they don't need society, or they don't need people to work for them for heart failure. So it's really my great pleasure, and you are very welcome. So my lecture is going to cover definition of heart failure, importance of right ventricular function, and then the right versus left ventricle. Then we touch update on anatomy and physiology and assessment of the right ventricle versus left ventricle, causes of heart failure, and then pathophysiology of heart failure, and then clinical presentation of heart failure, and the echo modalities, which will be the main issue of this lecture, and then the assessment of the right ventricular diastolic function. As we know that the assessment of the left ventricular diastolic function is difficult, but it's more difficult when it comes to right ventricle. So we talk about limitations and new techniques and what are here in UAE our research trends. So I have chosen today, actually exactly 30 years when I start my first research in Sweden, and I thought that in this occasion, so this lecture will be devoted for my work and my co-collaborators and our team, and rather than to speak about others. We would like to share with you our experience, and we would like to share with you also what our contribution to the literature, which we are building on now. So the definition of heart failure is the inability of the right ventricle to provide adequate blood flow through the pulmonary circulation at the normal central venous pressure. So I will go still background. Failure of the left ventricle has been intense investigation and interest for decades, while failure of the right ventricle has tended to receive little attention. So the right ventricle considered as a relatively passive conduct of blood between the systemic and pulmonary circulation. So the question here, is the right ventricle important? So let us see, this is classical picture which I like to show. When you go and buy a shoe, you don't buy the left one. So that, I mean, both of them, you need the right one and you need the left one. So otherwise you cannot walk or you cannot enjoy your comfortable walking. So also I would like to show you from the observation from the nature. You look at this gentleman, you have problem with his right leg, and you see that the mechanism of walking is changed compared to his lady here, and you look that he has to rotate, or you have to look at the middle here, so the movement in the long axis and in this circumference area, so you have to change this to adapt and you're walking. So that means that it's important that the both sides work proper, so life will be easy. Then this is one more example. This is even worse situation with this is very, very young lady. Her right leg is not working proper, and she can't do it without a stick. And you see, look at the movement here. If you imagine this is the heart, this is a long axis, this is a short axis, look at the movement clockwise. So this is a quite clear example. So let us come and now go to the clinical situation. So this is the 65 years old man, diabetes, hypertension, chest pain, emesis, paresthesia, blood pressure was 115/78, heart rate 65, and respiratory rate 30. So we see here from this, he came with chest pain. You see ST elevation in lead 2, ST elevation in lead 3, and ST elevation in AVL. So it's quite obvious and clear inferior myocardial infarction. But if you look more in the ECG, you see there is reciprocal ST depression in the lead 1 and then also in AVL. So this patient was come to the hospital and he was given aspirin at the first step, and then remember here they given only sublingual nitroglycerin 0.4, which is a very small dose. Just minutes later, the patient vomits, the blood pressure is not recordable, and the heart starts to go 90. So this is the typical bending cardiogenic shock, and then we just change the leads from V1 left side, we take it to R1, R2, R3, and you see the ST elevation here. This is another example, which is a case which I have been in Sweden where I'm working there. This is a 49-year-old lady. She's a smoker. She's had family history of heart disease, chest pain, breathlessness, and cough, and mild raised temperature. So she came, she was admitted because there is high prevalence of ischemic heart disease. She's a heavy smoker, and so she was admitted. The next day, chest pain free, we did the stress, and then discharge. And then the patient herself, she wanted to go home, and then after many weeks, the patient comes back with chest pain, tachypnea, breathlessness, and unfortunately, when we just landed in the emergency department, she dropped dead. And then what we did that autopsy to find the final cause of this, so it was a huge pulmonary embolism. So from this, I think it is very convincing now. All the people agree the right ventricle is not failure, is not errors as common as the left, but also that isolated right failure may carry worse prognosis. And recently, the importance of the right ventricle have been, and maintaining hemodynamic stability and function has been recognized. So the right ventricle, it is an independent predictor of mortality in left ventricular failure. It's also correlated very well with the exercise capacity, and also the patient who had right ventricular involvement following a myocardial infarction had a high incidence of complication. We saw the development of involvement of right infarction and then the pending cardiogenic shock, but also we know all patients with inferior myocardial infarction, they have intermittent AV block. It could be 2, it could be 3, it could be resuscitation, and that is the pacemaker, and that is really very serious condition. So the right ventricle presents unique challenge in identification and management. We all agree on that. So actually, when I start my research 2 or 3 years after that, so we talk about the proposed, the forgotten neighbor, because we don't, even I did my PhD in systemic sclerosis, but the right ventricle is important, but I did not mention that at all, because I didn't do any investigation, and there is no need to do that. So is it really that this is forgotten, or we just exaggerated? And I have 3 explanations, so I hope that you share this with me and you agree with me. We know that the greatest work have been in human being is William Harvey when he discovered the circulation, and that was a great achievement. Then it is unfortunately that in 1616, Sir William Harvey described the right ventricle as the right ventricle may be made for the sake of transmitting blood through the lungs, not for nourishing them. So I do believe that, as some share with this in the literature, this has delayed the scientist and researcher to investigate the right ventricle, because the guy who discovered the circulation said this is just a passage. So unfortunately, so that was one reason maybe, but 400 years ago, 400 years after this statement, all documentation, there is the right ventricle is very important and should be paid attention to. But I do believe that at that time we don't know how to do it, how to assess the right ventricle. We did not admit that we can't, but we said it is difficult. Then there is no technology. So from 30 years ago, we don't have Doppler tissue imaging, we don't have speckle tracking, we don't have MRI as now. So these may be the reasons. Then I would like to tell you, because the problem with the right ventricle actually is the anatomy and the physiology that differ from the left ventricle. So the right ventricle is taking blood and pump it through the pulmonary artery, anatomically divided into two parts, which is the sinus and the body, or the outflow tract. And then in cross-sectional examination, the right ventricle is crescent shape due to the fact that it can give free wall wrap around the convex inventricular septum. The right ventricular comparatively thin wall with approximately 1/6 of the muscle of the left ventricle, and it is well designed to accommodate increase in preload, but fully designed to adjust increase in afterload. So the left ventricular pump blood under high blood pressure, so the vascular system of flow compliance, the right ventricle pump under lower pressure, so high compliant vascular system. Also, in addition, the high compliance of the right ventricular outflow tract absorbs more of the energy profile to eject the blood. And this is also, you can see it here in the pressure volume curve. This is for the left ventricle, it's almost square, and this is the right ventricle, it's triangular, and this is mainly because during systole and the pressure of the pulmonary artery, and there is rise, so there is little time spent as volume contraction, and so this gives the shape or different from that. So what is the assessment of the right versus left? Why we did well with left ventricle? Because it is anatomy, geometry, and there is geometrical assumption. You can calculate stress, you can calculate the ventricular mass, you can calculate many parameters. And there is mathematical formula. So you can apply it to Doppler, you can apply it to echo, and then you can get parameter assessing. And as you see here, that this is the so you see that this is the four-chamber view, which is very easy to, I don't know why it's not working, but this is very easy. You see the right ventricle here. Yes, very difficult. Here is very well defined, the left ventricle. The lateral wall is difficult to see, and that would be very, very difficult because you have to use a special technique. So the right ventricle is complex anatomy and geometry, and no geometrical or mathematical formula, so that makes it a little difficult. And then we have this inflow tract and the infundibulum, and then you have the outflow tract. So you see this is the inflow tract here, and then you see this is the outflow tract for the right ventricle. But they are neighbors, they share the septum, they are muscle fibers, pericardium, coronary flow, changes in pressure, and the volumes in the thorax. This is, you see here, there are two different, the right ventricular outflow tract, right ventricular inflow tract, and you see that the right ventricle is contracted perpendicular, the inflow and outflow, they are perpendicular. So if you want to assess the inflow, you cannot put the transducer at the cruiser here, and if you want to assess the outflow, so you have to use different technique. And the fiber orientation also is different, so the architecture of the left ventricle and right ventricle are different. The circumferential fiber makes the predominant muscle layer in the left ventricle, particularly at the base level, and are mounted on either side longitudinally in the subendocardial and subendocardial layer. You see here that the layers is so totally different from the left and right. And this is a great job that comes from Brompton Hospital. I think they did a lot of the right ventricle anatomy and physiology. This is the two ventricles, although they are different, but they do the same job, they work with each other. But the concept of the size and function of one will affect the other. And we have what we call the ventricular interdependence. There is a lot of research done in this area. And that is one of the most important development and data assessment of cardiac function. So the left ventricle movement systole involves both shortening, because you know the apex is stationary, so the displacement of the longitudinal fiber, and then during systole the cardiac apex of the heart is stationary, and the mitral vein is displaced up, and then during diastole it descends down. So this is systole and diastole. In the right ventricle, there are many spiral circumferential fibers in the subendocardium and partial longitudinal in subendocardium. And then in the infundibulum at the subepicardial and subendocardial. So this is a very complicated about the structural anatomy, but that's just on the fibers run differently and they are contracting to continue each other. Of course, everyone knows a lot about the very famous Leonardo da Vinci for his Mona Lisa, but if you look at the literature, or if you have been in Milan for his museum, you have a lot of drawing about hearts, interestingly about longitudinal fibers, and about the heart function. So, of course, the word heart failure, you know this very well, that is heart failure is no more after load, infarction, secondary to increase after load, pulmonary impulse, and then mitral valve disease, pulmonary hypertension, and recently there is a lot of report about obstructive sleep apnea. And increase after also complicating surgery, extensive lung resection, atrial septal defect, and this go on. So the pathophysiology of right heart failure, the common cause of right heart failure can be divided intrinsic, and this is in absence of pulmonary hypertension, like in right myocardial infarction, the case I presented, or secondary to increase right ventricular afterload. So right ventricular failure because of volume overload. So this is a very classical in the literature on the cascade of the right ventricular afterload, and then goes to contraction, and then it goes on until hypertrophy, and then right ischemia, and then it goes to heart failure. And here also dilatation, and all these lead to the right ventricular failure. So the clinical presentation is peripheral edema, tubular venous distension, peristaltic hepatomegaly, heart sounds, systolic murmur, and the list goes on. So the right ventricular assessment in clinical practice have very important include congestive heart failure, acute pulmonary embolism, right ventricular acute myocardial infarction, and in cardiac surgery there is by-year reports in this work. So how would I diagnose the right ventricle? Then we have to go back to basics, because what is important in heart failure is the timing of the cardiac cycle. So you see here that this is that the two ventricles are working together, and the blood is coming here, oxygenated, and you see here the pressure curve volume. So this can be demonstrated here, the electrical activity here, P wave, QRS, and then change of the mechanical pressure different, opening the valves here, and closing the valve, first sound, second and third sound. This is very important. The timing of cardiac cycle in heart failure is very useful to look, and then to maybe very helpful in the treatment. And then this is also the cascade here, when you see the cardiac cycle in the two dimension, you see there is the atrial systole, atrial contraction, isovolemic contraction, and then followed by ejection, and then as well relaxation. Why I'm showing this? Because the question is echo can do this or not, because this is the only technique that's available. So before I go in that, as being in Sweden for 20 years, and it's my second home, so that many people, they don't know this is echo was discovered in Sweden, and Professor Edra, he is the first one in the world with his Professor Hertz from Germany, that from University of Lund, and this is the first echo machine it was used. Look at it, and very simple machine transformed to do this recording, and this is the first race that have been done in 29th of October 53. And this is now, if you visit Sweden, you go to Lund, so you see this first echo machine in the Museum of Medicine. So this is now the sophisticated one, you don't need to work too much, just get a good view and you get everything. So when we start our work, we tried to use the standard at that time 30 years ago, and we did the M-mode. We can only measure the right vertical diameter. And then we designed that in 85, we designed a software, and we used that software to try to calculate dimensions and anatomy and geometry of the heart. But you see from here that only right ventricular flow tract. Here you cannot get any right ventricle, and then all this. Then when you go to 4 chamber, you have the right ventricle, but it's not nice to get a lateral wall. But after all this work, which is published very early, we were not able to measure from all these efforts only the basal diameter and the right ventricular outflow tract. So that is all you could do. And then we did for the mitral in Chalmers Institute of Technology in Sweden, and then we have an engineer who developed software. We use it in the assessment of the diastolic function of the left ventricle, but we also use it in the tricuspid, and we can get the total diastole time, filling time, very 75%, and it helps us in understanding the right ventricular failure. We use it in mitral regurgitation, and the same software we use it in cases of right heart. So the limitation of echocardiography when we talk about heart is the pulmonary, right heart is the pulmonary artery systolic pressure. And by the way, we have very distinct two colleagues here, Professor Sanderson and Professor O'Neill, who are the pioneers of echo in the world. So they can correct me if I am missing something, if I am wrong. So the calculation was difficult. So it is only obtained in 75%. So you need tricuspid regurgitation, and you need to apply Breuer equation, and then to calculate pulmonary artery systolic pressure, and then you can judge about the pulmonary circulation. So that was not possible to get only 35%. Then in Sweden we are lucky with my colleagues, we get the using the harmonic imaging when it came for the first time, and that's improved the detection of ejection fraction by more than 80%, and we also were able to calculate the pressure drop between the right and left ventricle. And that article was published in the Lancet. We are happy because Lancet, they don't publish methodology, but they keep interesting that ejection fraction is a core of cardiology. And that was, editorial was written from Masudas from United States of America about this article. So this is the, from understanding the anatomy, of course the right and left ventricle have stimulated us to think about concept and hospitalize new things. So right ventricle cannot be assessed from one echocardiographic view due to fiber orientation assessment of cardiac function. This technique that recognizes the heart fibers orientations, and then the behavior of the ventricles, M-mode and Doppler tissue imaging. These were techniques that measuring the myocardial velocities. This is the, actually we have seen this very nice picture and stimulators, because you see when the cleaner here, they soak it in diastole and then they put it here, so he pressed the longitudinal fibers come down, and then he rotated like the longitudinal fibers and the complete empty of the ventricle. So that's how the ventricle works. So nature is always telling you what to do. So we thought about the right ventricular flow tract, and then we measure that, the systole and diastole, and calculate what's called right ventricular outflow tract fractional sorting. And that was a very good cooperation done by UMU and Sweden and Professor Michael O'Neill. At that time he was in Brompton Hospital. So we did a very good cooperation, and then we measured this. And this is one patient came to the hospital with a severe right ventricular failure, and then when we applied, we found that the right ventricular fraction shortening is just 12, so very bad right ventricle. This is another patient with pulmonary embolism, and even that the contraction of the right ventricle is very bad, and the right ventricular flow tract fraction shortening is 8%. And of course, we use this actually with my time I was visiting in Toronto Hospital, sensitization of the lung axis and how to calculate calculate systolic and diastolic measurement. So when we have this parameter, we tested, does this parameter differentiate between patient and control? Yes, highly significant. Yes, differentiate in the right ventricular function as the right ventricular longitudinal axis, the pressure drop, and pulmonary acceleration time. So our parameter, which is the fairest, we are the fairest to report, can differentiate with patient and control like others. Okay, what else? Is there correlation? This is our parameter, right ventricular fraction shortening. It is highly correlated with the right ventricular long axis, and it is correlation coefficient is very high. And also, is this correlated with the pulmonary acceleration time? Yes, high correlation point A and significance P value. Then we look at the right ventricular fraction shortening as the pressure drop. That is important in the right ventricle. And then there is also modest correlation. So that we conclude the right ventricular flow fractional shortening is simple, reducible, easily measured parameter which seems to provide valuable information and about the right ventricular dilatation, reduce systolic free wall movement, so that it could be used as additional parameter. This is our proposal. We did not say that it's a perfect one, but we proposed that, and we have published that at that time in the European Journal of Echo, and we are honored by Professor Derek Gibson, who is one of the pioneers and the Echo. He wrote editorial about our theory and about parameter. To admit that, first we have problem to publish this, but because when we come with new ideas, it's like that. So we test the same theory in other disease we want. So we look at patients with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, and we use the MMOR 2D, and then we use also conventional Doppler with venous pulmonary venous flow, and then we also use the conventional Doppler tissue imaging, and we look at all these parameters, and we found that it can differentiate between patients and control. And further to document that our finding of diastolic dysfunction, we use myocardial performance index, that all you know, and then we found also that is very useful and correct to our methods. And then we are still found in Sweden using the FONO. You have S1, S2, this is good for time of cardiac cycle, this is diastole, this is systole, and this is diastole, and then you can do measurements in the long axis function. So we test this in a general population study, 300 patients, age 2 to 20, and we found that this is very useful. Here, this is diagrammatic. Here you see the electrical activity start in SA node, go to RV node, and the Purkinje fibers, and then until contraction. This is very well known. But this is, we can do it with echo. And this is, you can do it, you can study the propagation of electrical activity using Doppler tissue imaging. So we measure this at the base, which is very active. It is modest in the mid, and apex is almost stationary. So that is the technique that was used, and then we use the Doppler tissue imaging at that time to study aerobic contraction velocity and aerobic relaxation time. And this is the first study done in the literature in human. The first one is done in dogs in the United States by Professor Mark, very famous researcher. And we found that this, when we look at the general population, this is 300 very well selected. So we look at the correlation with age, with sex, and everything. So we found that it is very highly significant regarding and good correlation with all these techniques. And this is, we use here the age. We look at the effect of age and myocardial function. And also, you see, we have a very good correlation here. And then we try to see if there is atrial velocity is correlated to VIC, which we have been done in invasive and non-invasive. There is a very good correlation. And then we look at the patient with systemic sclerosis because it's difficult. They have problem with the right ventricle, and then we found that whether using Doppler tissue imaging or we're using conventional Doppler, this can be altogether differentiate between patients and control. And that was published in the test, and then we come again about this methodology, and then we create this. We want to look at the DPDDT, because all these parameters, when you submitted, they said, okay, where is the standard holding standard technique? But that golden is now is finishing. So what we did is that we use these non-invasive techniques, and we were able actually to study the diastolic function and systolic function, and we also look at the correlation. This is done non-invasively, and this is non-invasively, and it's very well, there is a good correlation. So all these techniques, that time this was. This is how we did the examination. First of all, to be honest, all my work in the right ventricle is go to this young man, because he is his idea to study the right ventricle. This is my PhD student, so he came to me and he learned a lot from him, and we did this study. And then here, this is in Uppsala University, while he's recording non-invasively the cardiac, so we are here do the cardiac catheterization, and this we are able to compare. He did a very good work in patients with heart failure and multi-disease, and I do believe that this is the first concrete PhD in the right ventricle, looking at all these techniques. And that was original work, validated, reliable, reducible, and state-of-the-art combination of cardiac catheterization and invasive technique. We have tested in different. So patients with ischemic cirrhosis, venosis are very difficult with pulmonary hypertension, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, myopathy, and then in general population, and effect of aging. And that's all have been done. This is the done also cooperation. We show this slide because Michael Kinane is here. So we cooperated with Brompton Hospital. So our right ventricle well and the left ventricle have been covered intensively, all non-invasive assessment. So in conclusion, understanding of the cardiac anatomy and fiber orientation can be used for implementation of echocardiography, techniques to assess right ventricular function. The daily clinical practice is very important, and Doppler tissue emission, long axis function, these are extremely very important. Of course, this is work, as I said, have been started in Sweden, in Umeå and Uppsala, in Gothenburg, and this is also cooperate with the Gothenburg. We did the analysis in Cambridge School, and in Umeå we did the recording of the general material, normal material, and then we did the analysis of the digitization in Royal Brompton Hospital, and we are very grateful. We have received a lot of money from the Swedish funding, more 1.5 million crowns, and of course this is just not only my work alone, so I have to mention all these people, they make it possible. Kenneth Skajdal, professor in Karolinska Institute, Anders Wallström from Uppsala, Roger Helgren Uppsala, Thomas Hildner from Gothenburg, Sulbrid, and Sandström, and my professor Michael Kinane and Wikström. So this is the guy who did the PhD, and now I think he's approaching to be professor in Umeå University in Sweden. Before to finish, many people with the discussion, they used to ask me, okay, you mentioned this, what's about the new concept? What is about speaker tracking? What is about the strain? Then the question is that this is, the new techniques. You can use speaker tracking, you can use strain to study the systolic and diastolic function. But this is, I don't want to go on this because this is take time, and also there is a lot of debate about these things, because I usually do believe that what is the parameter? What's the machine you need? You need a machine with all this technology for 3 million, or you just need an M-mode, basic Doppler, color flow, and maybe tissue Doppler. So I do believe that to make this investigation very simple, you can use simple machine. Because what we actually do, they do here with this long speaker tracking, they are looking at the shortening and looking at the lengthening, and that's have been already done by looking to long axis by M-mode. And there is a lot of publication from Brompton. So thank you so much for your attention, and I hope that I have covered what so far have been achieved in this talk. Thank you so much.